January 24th, 1848, Coloma, California. A carpenter named James Wilson Marshall is standing knee-deep in freezing water, staring at something in the palm of his calloused hand. The sun is barely up. The air smells like wet pine and fresh-cut timber. Behind him, the wooden frame of a sawmill, half-finished, crude, utilitarian creaks in the morning wind. Marshall isn't a prospector. He's not a dreamer. He's a builder, a journeyman carpenter with a job to do. But right now, in this moment, he's holding something that will destroy an empire, bankrupt a king, and light a fuse under the entire American continent. He doesn't know it yet, but the flakes of yellow metal in his hand, no bigger than a split PR about to trigger the largest peacetime human migration in recorded history. 300,000 people will abandon their homes, their families, their sanity, and flood into California chasing the promise of instant wealth. Cities will be born overnight. Fortunes will be made and lost in a single afternoon. And the man who owns the land beneath Marshall's boots, the man who hired him, the man who trusted him will die, broken, and cursing the day he ever met James Marshall. This is not a story about luck. It's a story about control, about what happens when one man's carefully constructed dream collides with an accident so catastrophic, so unstoppable, that it reshapes a nation. And it starts with a carpenter doing his job. Let's rewind 6 months. John Augustus Sutter is a king without a crown, a Swiss immigrant with a vision so audacious it borders on insanity. He's building an empire in the middle of nowhere, a private kingdom called Neuva Helvetia, or New Switzerland. 48,000 acres of prime California land was granted to him by the Mexican government in 1841. It's a kingdom with its own army, its own flag, its own currency. Sutter is the law. He's the bank. He's the judge, the mayor, the warlord, all rolled into one. And it's working. By 1847, Nueva Helvetia is thriving. Sutter's fort, a massive adobe compound, sits at the heart of it all, surrounded by wheat fields, orchards, and cattle ranches stretching to the horizon. He's got tanneries, distilleries, blacksmith shops, granaries. He employs hundreds: Native American laborers, European craftsmen, Mexican vaqueros. His wheat alone feeds half of California. He's shipping hides to Boston, brandy to Monterey, flour to the Russian settlements up north. John Sutter is living the American dream before America even owns California, but there's a problem. A bottleneck. Lumber to keep expanding to build more barns, more granaries, more housing for his growing workforce. Sutter needs timber. Lots of it. The nearest commercial sawmill is weeks away by ox cart. So Sutter makes a decision. He'll build his own mill. Upstream, in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, where the American River cuts through stands of virgin pine and fir 40 feet tall, he needs a foreman. Someone who understands construction, who can manage a crew, who can turn trees into boards. He hires James Marshall. Marshall is 45 years old. Wiry, bearded, with the permanent squint of a man who spent his life working in the sun. He's a New Jersey native, a trained carpenter and wheelwright. He's drifted west over the years. Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, always moving, always building. He'd fought in the Mexican-American War, mustered out in 1847, and wound up at Sutter's fort looking for work. Sutter offers him a partnership. Marshall will oversee construction of the sawmill. In exchange, he gets a share of the profits. It's a good deal. Marshall accepts. In August 1847, Marshall and a crew of about 20 men, mostly Mormon laborers, discharged from the warhead up into the hills to a spot called Coloma. It's remote, rugged, the kind of place where you can hear the river before you see it. Marshall picks a site along the South Fork of the American River and gets to work. Building a sawmill in 1847 is not romantic. It's brutal, methodical labor. You've got to dig a mill, race a channel to divert water from the river to turn the wheel. You've got to build the frame, install the saw blade, calibrate the gearing. Marshall and his crew work through the fall and winter. By January 1848, the mill is almost operational. The building is up. The wheel is installed. But there's a problem with the tail race. The channel returns the water back to the river after it's turned the wheel. It's too shallow. Water isn't flowing fast enough. Debris is piling up. Marshall's solution is simple. Let the river do the work. Every night they open the head gate and let the full force of the river scour out the tail race, clearing away mud and gravel. Every morning, Marshall inspects the channel to see what the water's done. January 24th, 1848, a Monday. Marshall is walking the tail race at dawn, doing his routine inspection. The water is low, clear, and that's when he sees it, a glint. A flash of yellow in the gravel. Marshall bends down, picks it up. It's small, maybe half the size of a pea. It's heavy, soft. It doesn't tarnish like pyrite. He bites it. It dents. He picks up another one, and another. Marshall isn't a geologist. He's never prospected a day in his life. But he's read enough, seen enough to suspect what he's holding. He gathers a few more flakes, wraps them in a rag, and walks back to the mill building. His crew is already at work, sawing logs. Marshall pulls one of the men aside, a Mormon named Henry Bigler, and shows him the flakes. "Boys," Marshall says, "I believe I've found a gold mine." The crew laughs. They think he's joking. But Marshall is dead serious. He spends the next 2 days running crude tests. He pounds the flakes with a hammer. They flatten but don't shatter. He boils one in lye water from the laundry kettle. It doesn't corrode. He weighs them against silver coins. Everything points to the same conclusion. It's gold. On January 28th, Marshall saddles his horse and rides 40 miles back to Sutter's Fort. He arrives at night, soaking wet from a rainstorm, and demands to see Sutter in private. They lock themselves in Sutter's office. Marshall pulls out the rag and dumps the flakes on Sutter's desk. "I believe this is gold," Marshall says, "but the people at the mill believe it to be some other metal." Sutter stares at the flakes. He's a businessman, a pragmatist. He pulls out his Encyclopedia Americana and looks up the entry on gold. They run more tests. Nitric acid, specific gravity measurements, side-by-side comparisons with a gold coin. Every test confirms it. It's gold, pure gold. And there's more of it up at the mill. Here's what you need to understand about John Sutter in this moment. He is not happy. Most men, finding gold on their land, would celebrate. They'd shout from the rooftops. They'd start digging immediately. Not Sutter. Sutter sees the future with a clarity that borders on prophecy. He knows exactly what will happen if word gets out. His workers will abandon their posts. His fields will go unplowed. His cattle will wander off. Squatters will invade his land. His entire empire, everything he spent 7 years building, will collapse overnight. Gold. John Sutter is not a blessing. It's a death sentence. He tells Marshall, "We must keep this quiet." Marshall agrees. They shake on it. A secret pact. They'll finish the sawmill. They'll operate it as planned. And they'll quietly extract whatever gold they can find without attracting attention. No fuss, no drama. Just two men in control, exploiting a resource intelligently. It's a reasonable plan. It fails immediately. If you, like us, believe that human ingenuity can solve any problem, even when the solution becomes the problem itself, click the subscribe button and tell us in the comments what part of the world you're watching from. Here's the thing about secrets. They require everyone involved to stay silent. And Marshall's crew at the sawmill? They already know Henry Bigler, the Mormon laborer who was there when Marshall made the discovery. Writes in his diary on January 24th, "This day, some kind of metal was found in the tail race that looks like gold." Another worker, Azariah Smith, writes to his family. Word spreads through the crew. By early February, some of the men are spending their offers panning the river instead of working. Sutter tries to contain it. He rides up to the mill and addresses the crew personally. He offers them a deal. "Keep working, finish the mill, and I'll grant you prospecting rights on a designated plot of land. Fair wages plus gold." It's a generous offer. It works. For about 3 weeks, the mill is completed in March 1848. It's operational. It's cutting timber. Mission accomplished. But by now, the secret is leaking like a sieve. Sutter's own employees at the fort are hearing rumors. Prospectors start showing up at Coloma, asking questions. Sutter tries to buy time. He travels to Monterrey still under Mexican military governance, attempts to secure legal mining rights to the land around the mill. But California is in chaos. The Mexican-American War has just ended. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, signed on February 2nd, 1840, 9 days after. Marshall's discovery cedes California to the United States. Nobody knows who's in charge. Mexican law? American law? Who owns what? Sutter's request is ignored, and then, in mid-March, the secret detonates. Samuel Brannan is a Mormon entrepreneur, a merchant, a hustler. He runs a general store at Sutter's fort. He's heard the rumors. He's seen the workers coming back from Coloma with gold dust. And Samuel Brannan does what any good capitalist would do. He sees an opportunity. First, he rides up to Coloma and confirms the rumors himself. He pans the river. He fills a small bottle with gold dust. Then he rides back to San Francisco at the time, a sleepy village of about 800 people, and executes one of the most brilliant marketing stunts in American history. On May 12, 1848, Samuel Brannan walks down the streets of San Francisco, waving a bottle of gold dust over his head, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Gold! Gold! Gold!" from the American River. Within days, San Francisco is a ghost town. Every able-bodied man abandons his job and heads for the hills. Sailors desert their ships. Soldiers desert their posts. The newspaper, The Californian, literally shuts down because the entire staff has left to prospect. The editor publishes one final issue with a note. The whole country resounds with the sordid cry of gold. Gold! Gold! While the field is left half-planted, Brannan, of course, has prepared for this. He stocked his store at Sutter's fort with every pickaxe, shovel, and pan he can get his hands on. He sells metal pans, normally worth 20 cents for $15 each. He makes more money selling supplies to miners than most miners ever make digging for gold. But for John Sutter, the nightmare has begun. By the summer of 1848, Sutter's fort is overrun. Thousands of prospectors are flooding into the region. They're not asking permission. They're not paying rent. They're just ... taking. Sutter's wheat fields are trampled by men and horses. His cattle are stolen or butchered on the spot. Squatters set up camps on his land, dig wherever they please, and move on when the gold runs out. His workers, every single one, desert him to join the gold rush. Even his own son, John Jr., who arrives from Switzerland in late 1848 to help manage the estate, is powerless to stop the chaos. Sutter tries to fight back. He hires lawyers. He appeals to the new American military governor of California. He files land claims. He writes letters to Washington, but it's useless. The California gold rush is a runaway train, and Sutter is tied to the tracks. The numbers are staggering. In 1848, an estimated 6,000 prospectors are working the American River Basin. By 1849, the year of the 49ers, that number explodes to over 90,000. By 1852, the peak of the rush, more than 300,000 people have poured into California. The population of California increases by 2,000% in 4 years. Towns spring up overnight. San Francisco goes from 800 residents in 1848 to 25,000 by 1850. Sacramento built on land. Sutter, once owned, becomes a boomtown, a supply hub for miners, heading into the foothills. Ships from around the world jam the harbor, their crews deserting before the anchors are even dropped. And the gold? It's real. It's everywhere. In the first year alone, prospectors pull an estimated $10 million worth of gold out of the Sierra Nevada. By 1852, annual production hits $80 million. It's the largest gold strike in human history up to that point, dwarfing anything found in South America or Europe. But John Sutter sees none of it. His legal battles are a disaster. Under Mexican law, Sutter's land grant is legitimate. But under American law specifically, the California Land Act of 1851, every Mexican-era land grant must be revalidated by a federal commission. Sutter spends years and thousands of dollars in legal fees trying to prove he owns the land he's been living on for a decade. He loses. Most of his claim is invalidated. Squatters are granted legal title to land they simply occupied. Sutter's fort itself, the crown jewel of his empire, is carved up and sold off. Piece by piece. By 1852, Sutter is broke. His agricultural empire is gone. His sawmill, the one Marshall built, burns down in 1853, possibly arson by frustrated squatters. Sutter moves to a small farm in Pennsylvania, where he spends the rest of his life lobbying Congress for compensation. He petitions for restitution, arguing that his land was stolen, that he's owed millions. Congress ignores him. John Sutter dies in 1880. In a hotel room in Washington, D.C., still waiting for a meeting with a congressman who never showed up. He's 77 years old, penniless, bitter. The man who once ruled 48,000 acres dies owning nothing, and James Marshall, the carpenter who started it all, he fares no better. Marshall tries to capitalize on the discovery. He prospects for a while, but he's no luckier than anyone else. The easy gold is picked clean within months. He tries to charge miners a licensing fee for digging on land near the original discovery site. They laugh at him. Some threaten violence. By the 1860s, Marshall is destitute. He drifts through the mining camps, occasionally giving lectures about the discovery for a few dollars. People pay to see the man who found the first gold, but nobody pays him for the gold itself. He becomes a curiosity, a relic. He dies in 1885 in a small cabin near Coloma, supported by a tiny pension from the California State Legislature, $200 a year, granted out of pity. His funeral is attended by a handful of locals. The two men most responsible for the California gold rush, the man who owned the land, and the man who found the gold, both died broke. But the story doesn't end with their failures. Because while Sutter and Marshall were destroyed, the world they accidentally created became a colossus. California, in 1848, is a remote Mexican backwater with maybe 15,000 non-native residents. By 1850, it's a U.S. state. By 1860, it has nearly 400,000 people. The gold rush doesn't just bring miners, it brings farmers, merchants, bankers, engineers, saloon keepers, prostitutes, con artists, and dreamers. It brings Chinese laborers by the tens of thousands, Irish immigrants fleeing famine, freed black prospectors seeking opportunity. San Francisco becomes the financial capital of the West. The gold fuels the expansion of railroads, telegraphs, and steamship lines. It finances the Union Army during the Civil War. California gold literally keeps the northern economy afloat. It funds the construction of infrastructure that connects the Pacific coast to the rest of the nation, and the technological innovations born from the gold rush. They reshape entire industries. Hydraulic mining blasting hillsides with high-pressure water, condensate, pioneered in California. It's brutal, environmentally catastrophic, but staggeringly effective. Engineers develop techniques for building dams, flumes, and aqueducts to move water across mountainous terrain. These methods are later adapted for large-scale agriculture, turning California's Central Valley into the most productive farmland in the world. Dredging technology used to extract gold from riverbeds is refined to the point where it's later deployed in major construction projects worldwide. From the Panama Canal to harbor expansions across the globe, even the legal frameworks born from the chaos have lasting impact. The mining codes developed by prospectors in the 1850s and formal rules about claim sizes, water rights, and dispute resolution become the basis for U.S. mining law. Still in effect today, the irony is almost unbearable. James Marshall's accidental discovery. A carpenter, glancing down at a tail race and noticing a flake of gold, destroys the one man who tried to control it, enriches a nation that barely existed, and creates the blueprint for westward expansion. John Sutter wanted an empire. He got chaos. Marshall wanted to build a sawmill. He got a tombstone. But California got everything. By 1869, The Transcontinental Railroad connects California to the rest of the United States. With its western terminus in Sacramento, the city built on Sutter's land, by 1900, California is the economic engine of the Pacific. By 2024, it's the world's fifth largest economy, larger than India, larger than the United Kingdom, and it all started because a carpenter doing his job looked down at the mud and saw something shiny. There's a monument at Coloma now, where the sawmill once stood, a stone marker, a statue of James Marshall pointing at the spot where he made the discovery. Tourists visit. They take pictures. They pan for gold in the river, finding nothing but pebbles. John Sutter's fort has been restored. It's a state park. School groups tour it, learning about the man who almost built a kingdom. But the real legacy isn't in monuments or museums. It's in the lesson control is an illusion. You can build walls, sign treaties, make pacts, enforce rules. But when the ground beneath you shifts, when an accident, a discovery, a random glint of metal in a riverbed ignites something unstoppably, your empire, your plans, your carefully constructed order, it all burns. The California Gold Rush is proof that history doesn't care about your blueprints. It cares about momentum. And once that momentum starts, you either ride it or get crushed beneath it. Sutter got crushed. Marshall got crushed. But the rest of the world? It rode that wave all the way to the Pacific. Stories of practical genius and the chaos it unleashes are everywhere. If you enjoyed this deep dive into how one man's work ethic accidentally destroyed an empire and built a state, subscribe for more, and don't forget to leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Until next time.